Da, da, da. And we are here. We are here. We are live. It is the Spoiler Room, and it's our last episode of Totally Committed, where we've been looking at films that took place in mental institutions. And tonight is a kids' movie, of all things.
Kind of.
It's from Disney. It's actually on Disney Plus, but so is a lot of things from Hulu, which makes scrolling really weird. But anyway, tonight, yes, we are looking at a Return to Oz, the sequel no one asked for, from 1985, starring a number of familiar faces and yeah, we'll just get into it. But I got a wonderful panel with me tonight to talk about this film and share some of us for the childhood trauma that it caused for when it came out. So thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair and popping your favorite drink. Yes, I am drinking responsibly because I'm going to need it tonight. And I also need this wonderful panel with me. First off, she came back again. We have not scared her off. Celeste from Hex and Arcane is here. Hello, Celeste.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. And I love the glasses, by the way. Those glasses are rocking. I seriously. Those rock. They were seriously rock. And then the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Joe Randazzo is here.
Hey, everyone.
And of course, my right-hand man, he keeps coming back. He keeps coming back. And we appreciate it. It's Mr. Ian Simmons. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great.
So glad to have you here. And yes, we are talking Return to Oz. Celeste, would you be able to give a synopsis of Return to Oz?
Okay. It's like 6 months after the events of Wizard of Oz, but somehow many, many years later. And it's Dorothy's going through some typical trauma. She can't sleep. She's dealing with the traumatic events. Her family's concerned because she keeps talking about Oz. So they bring her to a doctor in the city, and he wants to do electroshock treatment on her. And right before that happens, she escapes and ends up back in Oz, where she has to save her old friends by meeting new friends and also very traumatizing enemies.
That's very well put. That's very well put. And Celeste, we'll start with you because you mentioned it. Do you remember when this first came out, and did you see it in the theater, and what was your feeling?
No, I was like 2 or 3 or something.
Okay, so. I'm old. So
oh wait, no, 85. I was 1. So no, I did not see
well, now I feel real old. Let me get my AARP card. But no, please go ahead. Do you remember when first time you saw it then?
Yes, I know we rented it at a video store on VHS.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched it and I was absolutely traumatized. I have no idea how old I was, but I know that we went on to voluntarily rent it a couple more times despite the trauma that occurred every single time. I don't know why. My sister and I just continue to watch it.
Well, I can see that because it's fascinatingly weird. Fascinatingly weird.
It's like a really interesting, like a sort of bad acid trip.
It is, and we'll get more into that for sure. Joe, do you remember when you first saw this?
It was well into adulthood. I remember that because I did not see it as a kid. And to be honest, because as a kid I had only seen the 39 Wizard of Oz, and I was into like really spooky stuff as a kid, I didn't watch it because I thought it was going to be, like an MGM musical, and it's the furthest from that. And I learned later on, everything except the 39 Wizard of Oz is as far away from that as you can get. So, yeah, I didn't see it for a long time. Then when I saw it, I was like, I cannot believe that this is a kid's movie.
Yeah.
And then I realized the era it came out in Disney. It was the era where Disney decided, fuck them kids. We're going to scare the shit out of them. We're going to give them Watcher in the Woods. And,
Black Hole.
Yeah, Something Wicked This Way Comes, The Black Cauldron, and all that stuff. They decided they needed to traumatize as many children as possible in the 80s. So
it's wonderful. And Ian, how about you? First time you watched this? Oops.
Today.
Wow. All right.
Oh,
Yeah. It's fascinating because like my mouth was hanging wide open during most of this movie because all of the problems that Disney is having today can be traced back to this movie. It is a ill-conceived, completely pointless, near unwatchable legacy sequel that the only reason to watch it is because of the visuals, and that gets tiresome about a half hour in. You can just look at the poster, get the gist, and move on. I'm thinking specifically of Tron. This is the Tron legacy to the original Wizard of Oz, which, my God. Anyway, we'll talk more about it.
Well, it's interesting because it isn't really like. It's not officially a legacy sequel because it's
right.
It's not,
and that's part of the problem. Is this movie Disney, because the original Wizard of Oz was MGM, and now I think I'm not sure if it's owned by Warner's or there's some like weird relationship there, but Disney should have just made their own version of Wizard of Oz to establish its own voice with this style and these characters. And then if that did anything, which, spoiler alert, it wouldn't have, it would have gone down harder in flames in this flop, then they could have built this on that foundation. But they're like, oh no, we're actually adapting the source material, which they didn't. All they did was steal stuff from two of the Oz sequel books and essentially just template it on top of the Wizard of Oz, because this movie has pretty much the same high level story beats as the 39 film, but adding all this other weird, like Dorothy's in electroshock therapy, or she's about to be in the first 18 minutes of this movie. On top of that, Fairuza Balk was 10 when she made this. Judy Garland was 16 in the original Wizard of Oz. So nothing about this movie works from a fundamental standpoint, from the idea of like, hey, let's make a sequel to Wizard of Oz. Okay, what about this? No, that person should have been kicked out of the room and thrown down the incinerator at Disney.
Well, that did happen after this movie came out, because like you mentioned, it was a massive flop, and I think
Walter
it made
Murch didn't
only
do
11 million, but it cost like 25.
Yeah.
Well, Walter Murch didn't get another directing job for almost 30 years. Rightfully so. I mean, he's a renowned editor, and he's in the world of sound, but directing. And he co-wrote the movie, so it's not like, oh, is the screenwriters. This is his baby through and through.
Well, and since we're bringing it up, I've got just this tidbit of relevant trivia. Apparently, they actually fired Walter Murch a week into production due to budget concerns. The studio found dailies lacking and his slow shooting pace disheartening. Murch contacted friends Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas in '85. So he just pulled in the big shots for help, and all three directors lobbied Disney to rehire Murch. Lucas even offered to take over directing himself should Murch fall behind. Murch finished the film on schedule, though while in post-production, studio management changed. New executives had little faith in the movie and doomed it with limited promotion and a short theatrical run. So this thing was doomed before it got even started.
Yeah, that's why it was a flop.
Yeah. Well, it just shows that unlike today, the Disney executives back then actually had some taste. But my goodness. And this is probably Spielberg, Coppola, and Lucas backing this guy to get him back onto the movie. That's probably why he didn't work again for 30 years. You're like, my God, Walter, what did you do?
Let's not ignore the fact that Lucas did and if that doesn't work out, I'll be happy to direct something for you.
But I'm sorry, Ian, I watched this again today and I loved it so much more than when I was a kid. I think maybe it was the nostalgia. I was like, oh, that used to traumatize me so much.
I bored to tears. It was like watching anything. I think there's like maybe 3 Tim Burton movies that I actually like, and the rest of it I think is just him coasting on like goth kids and curly cues. I don't respect it. It's all style and no substance.
Funny you mentioned that. We have a character in here who shows up at one point because we don't have Scarecrow, which thank God we don't have much of this version of the Scarecrow, because I don't. Oh my Lord. but we get a new version, basically a avatar, a replacement for the Scarecrow in the form of Jack, who, by the way, yes, if he looks familiar, it is because he directly influenced Tim Burton's design of Jack Skellington. This character in this film, Return to Oz, Jack, the pumpkin-headed guy with the long, spindly twig legs and arms, there's a reason why. Burton didn't actually work on Return to Oz outside of he was like in one of the art departments or whatever, but that character directly influenced his design of Jack Skellington.
Yeah, I was going to say Tim Burton was working at Disney at this time. So
he was.
So
it just wasn't this film. It just wasn't. But if you look at this, you almost are like, are you sure Burton didn't work on this?
Well, if he's somewhere in the art department, he may have had an uncredited part in it in some way in the creation of this character. Because, it does look like Jack the Pumpkin King.
And it's supposed to.
Well, I mean, regardless, this movie came out in 1985. And
right.
Henry Selick didn't do Nightmare until 92, 93?
Yeah, 93.
Yeah, it came out in 93, so probably working on it in 92.
So even if Burton just was one of 3 people who actually saw this movie in the theater, he could have been like, I want that guy. I'm going to kill him and bring him back as a skeleton.
Yeah, so the film opens and you get very young Dorothy and Auntie, and she's having nightmares, and so Uncle finds an article in a newspaper for a doctor who promises to help people out with the way he spins it. Was it electrotherapy? Is I think how it's.
Yeah.
Fun fact: that newspaper clipping mentions Black River Falls and a township in it, which are real places here in Wisconsin. Now, never mind the fact that the town mentioned in the article absolutely does not match the town that the asylum's actually in.
And they're in Kansas.
And they're in Kansas. But my wife, she was sitting with me on the couch, and I just fired up the movie. I'm like, I got to watch this for a show. And that's how she gets roped into watching these movies sometimes. Anyway, she's sitting there, she's watching it. I saw the news article. I'm like, Black River Falls. And she's like, what? And so we rewound it and we paused on it. And sure enough, the whole description of the location would be a location in Wisconsin.
Was Walter Murch a Wisconsin guy?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I think someone from the art department might have been, though. I think she was trying to look something up there. It just has odd connections to Wisconsin, but that's just one of them.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Celeste, is that a bit jarring? I mean, Ian mentioned it. I mean, this is supposed to be a sequel to Oz. It's 6 months later, and we get not older Dorothy.
It didn't bother me, but my husband said he saw the movie once as a kid, and that bothered him when he was little.
Right.
Because he was watching it with me again.
Because I mean, if you're trying to sell that this is a direct sequel, at least get someone the same age as the original Dorothy. Right?
Yeah, it never bothered me, but I could see why it would.
Yeah.
Walter Murch was born in New York City, so no, he's not a Wisconsin guy.
Well, I think the problem, again, this goes back to fundamentals, but like if you got a 16-year-old or 17-year-old or someone playing that age, then this movie equally doesn't make sense because she's not going to be having the complaining about the dreams and all this other stuff. Because in the original, Oz version, at least, Dorothy comes back and you get the feeling that she understands that all the people that are on her farm were represented by people in the dream. So it's not going to be like, oh my God, why is everyone so different? But no, the other problem is that The Wizard of Oz, it's not like The Thing when John Carpenter remade it, where it's like this beloved, like lightning bolt of pop cultural importance. It's The Wizard of Oz. Everybody knows it. So if you're going to set your story a few months later and like, wait a second, that's not Dorothy Gale, then that's from Jump Street, you got an issue.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it is the fact that if you're trying to pull in fans of this, they're just going to immediately. I mean, and that's within the first few minutes. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's not a prequel. It's a
This
sequel,
isn't
right?
a prequel, no. Though, and you have the uncle who supposedly broke his leg but didn't, but they haven't finished their new house yet, because we get Annie M complaining to Dorothy about almost having 2 mortgages, and they didn't have any mortgage at all. And Joe, you threw it. You sent the comment in the chat. I thought that was interesting about Auntie M's first solution for helping the traumatized child who was in a tornado. What does she do? She sends her off to some quack.
Yeah, and then while she's there, she's like, I need to leave right now to get back to take care of your, 55-year-old uncle who's apparently useless if I'm not around.
I have a feeling that was an excuse. I have a feeling that it would be too difficult for her to stay there and watch it. And so she used it as an excuse to say, okay, I'm going to let the doctors handle it and I'm going to step out of this.
And honestly, Auntie M, that does make sense because Auntie M, even in the 1939 movie, she's not exactly warm to Dorothy. Like even
it was a matter of warmth. I think she cared too much. Like as like a parent figure, it's tough to watch your kid go through that stuff. Like, so I think that she just couldn't handle it, and she was like concerned, and so she just left.
Well, right, but that's a contradictory statement, right? As a parent, you're supposed to buckle up and say, "My kid needs me."
Yeah,
so even if it's tough, right? Don't go all the way back to frickin' Kansas, the farm out in the boonies. Find a hotel in town.
Sure, but
there's some place that she can stay, either that or just curl up on a couch. If she had cancer, she'd be like, "Oh, I can't handle this. I got to go back and hang out with the uncle."
That was an older perspective on parenting, though. Like, that was how things were done. Like, if your kid has like the measles or something, you leave them in the hospital. Or if, like, they used to tell parents, don't come visit your sick child because then they'll just cry when you leave. And so parents would literally just not.
Then they need to establish that in a period movie, because you're talking about a philosophy that's 100 years old at this point, right?
Over that, because I think this movie's set in 1908.
1899.
1899, okay.
Because the doctor mentions next year will be the 20th century.
Yeah, he said in a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean,
because this happens to take place in Halloween, which I just randomly scheduled it here, and the fact that it takes place near Halloween. Another spoiler room quinky dink. Anyway,
and we got we have a gourd-headed character, so that works
we
too
do.
for this. It's the last one before Halloween.
Yeah, the "can you squish my head" thing was really weird.
But then she barely touches him either. Like, she doesn't touch him. Like,
this movie got rid of a lot of my childhood trauma, but it gave me some adult trauma.
Which is interesting because, now I guess you'd find yourself probably feeling sorry for Dorothy in a different way than you would have as a kid. Because as a kid, you probably related to her as a kid, whereas now you're kind of looking at it more like through the eyes of Aunt Em, which is, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah, that him calling her mom. I'm sorry. Ugh.
That dude, good. I'm not the only one. The minute he said, "Could you call me mommy instead?" I'm like, this has a completely different connotation as an adult now versus.
Like, he's sitting there in the room for who knows how long, jacking off by himself, and then like he's like, "Can you see if I'm squishy? And can I call you mommy?" And I'm just like, ew.
I mean, he is kind of a baby, though, in a way.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That is like my biggest ick, is if somebody calls me mom who is not biologically my child, I don't want it. Ew.
Well, that's the weird thing about that, is that I expected him. At first, I was like, "Is he British or something?" Because he keeps using the word "mom," and that's a common British thing.
Yeah.
It's like calling someone, madam, mom. But then he's like, just got this really weird, squishy kid voice. I'm like, no, that's not it. So I don't know what's going on with this Oedipal nonsense.
Well, he's also apparently not ever met his mother, if I'm understanding it correctly, because he was he was created as a scarecrow, and then by the time I guess he had any kind of sentience, his mother I don't think he knows who his mother is. Or did I miss?
No, because he found his mom at the end.
Right.
I mean, when he meets her, when he first meets Dorothy.
Oh.
Yeah,
when he
did.
But
he left. He said, didn't he say that his mom left or something?
Yeah, but I don't know how he met her at that point. Because he even asks, the very first thing he asks her is, "Are you my mommy?"
Oh
I guess
no.
that's true.
This movie, it does the obvious parallels, like with the Gnome King is actually the head of the head
Mhm.
psychiatrist. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if that whole mom thing was based on what we're talking about here, was Dorothy's manifestation of Auntie M leaving her at the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
I guess it's
Yeah.
possible, yeah.
It could be. It could be. Yeah. And where's, Dorothy's parents? No, just kidding.
Well, I mean, all right, and I'm not going to be able to do a 1-to-1 here with the novel Return to Oz, but if we're going to go with the idea that this is a sequel to the 39 movie,
Yeah.
then I think she was orphaned and left with Aunt Em by the state in that
I
movie.
think so.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
So-
I
It's
haven't
been
read
a
the
while
books
since I
in-
watched the originals. So,
Yeah, I haven't read the books in so many years,
Mm.
but I actually, because I read them when I was a kid, and I always felt like the books were actually closer to Return to Oz than the original Wizard of Oz, because they were really weird.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I've learned since high school, whenever it was everything from the Wizard of Oz except the 39 musical is its own thing that has nothing to do with the only thing that has anything to do with the 39 musical is anything that's riffing on it, and that's
Mhm.
something that I had to learn in adulthood, because the books themselves, from what I remember reading, and we're talking 20-25 years now, excuse me, they are creepy as hell. This entire universe is nightmare fuel, and I'm wondering if they were children's books written in 1907, when I think the average male life expectancy was like not much older than we are now.
That's actually pretty old now. Yeah,
preparing kids for the inevitability of death. It feels like
it could. That could
Wow,
be.
Joe.
Wow, you
No,
way to take it
believe
down.
me, I didn't want to
Thanks.
think about this that way either.
No, but you're right. The pumpkin kid. First off, it was weird him calling Dorothy mommy the whole time. I was throwing me. I'm like, why you call her Dorothy?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. He calls her mom. I don't think
Yeah.
he ever calls her mommy. So I'm wondering if
true,
that was just
mom.
a casting mistake and they meant to cast a Brit.
That could be. That could
Well,
be.
he asked if he could call her his mom,
Yeah.
because
Oh.
when she said, "I'm not your mom," and he's like, "Well, can I just call you that?"
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
she's apparently okay with it.
She's just cool.
Well,
Well, Dorothy's
probably back
okay
in
with
that day,
anything
she was
in
like
Oz.
a year away
she's
from
10.
marriage and kids anyway. But ew.
What was that, Celeste?
I said probably back in that day, she was like a year away from getting married and having kids.
I
but-
mean, back then, probably like 13, 14 would be when you were married. So
Well,
Yeah.
getting courting anyway. Yeah, I mean, I mean,
we
especially
gotta
in the
realize, like-
rural, especially in the rural communities, like far rural communities, there were young brides. So
I mean, we gotta look at the time period, which I think the books were all written in the early 1900s.
yeah, they were.
And I mean,
yeah.
if we're just looking at like just childhood mortality, the life expectancy, all this stuff, that you're gonna have a dark, dark children's story here.
Yeah, I mean, you are. This is definitely dark because I mean, Dorothy, she meets the pumpkin guy halfway through. At first, she shows up and she's in a part of Oz that has never been established until somehow she knew about this
it's in the
land.
book. That's why.
Well, yeah, I know it's in the book. I knew it was in the book, but it wasn't, the way they played this like it was supposed to be a sequel to the movie of sorts, the way they kind of promoted it. So when she shows up on the desert and she goes, "Oh, it's the deadly desert. If you touch it, you turn to sand." And I'm like, when was that? I don't remember Dorothy singing next to a deadly desert at all.
Well, she mentions that she flew over it when she was on her trip.
Oh,
so she
that's
would have
right,
seen
yeah.
it, but it's not really discussed in the. And this is
Right.
where it gets funny between like, is it a book adaptation or is it a sequel to the movie? They don't, it's feasible that at some point during her initial adventure, if we're going by the 39 movie, she had a conversation with someone
Right.
that maybe we
sure.
just didn't see. And they
Mhm.
talked about, this whole place is surrounded by a deadly desert. Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's another kind of bit of disjointedness between the three kinds of story this is.
Yeah, the average life expectancy in 1900 in the United States was 47.3.
Wow. So like 16 was near middle age.
Near middle age.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Whew.
So that perspective here,
not quite justified, but considering, I could see that, but
still
still ick. So she's in Oz and she happens across the house and the Munchkin village is just gone.
Yeah.
And the yellow brick road has just been destroyed. And we don't have Toto this time. Instead, we have the character who should have won an Oscar for this film, the talking chicken.
How did the chicken even get there? She left it on the farm, same as Toto. How did the chicken get there?
But Toto didn't somehow.
Toto did, but she happened to be there. We don't know why. Maybe carried in the flood where she found a crib that allowed her to float on the river after she followed the blonde-haired girl who seemed to be able to pull like ye old conjuring move of just appearing in her room and not appearing in her room.
Yeah.
I mean this whole thing it's trying, and I think why I enjoyed it more as an adult than as when I was a kid was because I, in all honesty, didn't really care about the story because I'm like, okay, I know the story beats here, but I love the production design of this film. I love the sets and the destroyed Emerald City and the bizarre costumes and the creatures and all of that. I loved all of that, and the story was like, okay, I'm like, I know where this is going, but I didn't recognize as a kid, like the animatronic chicken. I mean, for most of the film, when it's talking it, I like, it looks a little janky, not as bad as the Scarecrow, but I mean, Joe, the special effects in here, I mean, the practical effects.
That's where I stand with it. Is that I love the set design, I love the effects, and maybe because I didn't see this as a kid, I'm not like as fascinated by it. I still enjoy it. And this is, my third or fourth viewing of it. I still like it. There are parts that don't make sense. Yeah. And I'm fine with that. The part that makes the least amount of sense though, and maybe somebody can help me with this. Why is Jean Marsh's character arrested at the end of the movie? Because she didn't do anything.
Oh, at the very end,
you mean, off in the back of a police thing, and I'm like,
no. Her crime was wearing that black dress, that foreshadowing black dress with the peaks on her shoulder.
That made her look like the woman in black from the 1989 adaptation, which is really weird to see. And I'm wondering if the look of the woman in black was inspired by this.
I'm betting she got arrested because she chased the kids down to the river and the one drowned.
Yeah.
But she didn't chase them though. Well, I mean, she was chasing them, she was trying to get them back. In the real world, she didn't do anything wrong. She's trying to get these two little girls who ran away during a storm and trying to get them back in the hospital.
Yeah, they cut out the whole plot line where she was like forging checks and stuff.
That would make sense.
Is that in the book, or did you just make that up out of Winslet? Because
I just made it up.
Oh, that sounded feasible. You did very good. I see you can write it.
You find out, she was forging checks. Because even the electroshock therapy, which we can look at and be like, you're doing electroshock therapy on a 12-year-old. That is fucked up. But it wasn't illegal. So you can't really arrest her for something that wasn't illegal at the time it was being done.
And as we've already established, Joe, you're doing electroshock therapy on someone who's practically middle-aged.
Yeah. Actually, and I was talking to my wife, and we had a serious discussion because she's very heavy into psychology and that, and she's like, actually, electroshock therapy is still done today.
It is.
In very limited capacity, but it's still done today for very specific reasons. They know what condition they can use it that it'll actually help, but it's not like they show here where it's like clear, where you just.
Well, they also had the nodes on her ears. It like it was wearing headphones. It wasn't on the temples. I'm like,
and they just left it on here with the power out. Why? I was horrified.
That's what my wife said the minute that they said, okay, well, these are going to go over her ears. And she's like, wait, what?
Yeah, her ears would just burn off, wouldn't they?
There was no like conductive gel or anything either. Like,
no, it was like headphones. They literally like took these headphones.
It looked like, it was like Marty McFly's Walkman.
Although the electroshock device did have a face on it, yeah, because. Yeah,
I mean, when Nickel Williamson is like, oh, and this little dial is like its tongue, and he starts sliding it back and forth. I'm like,
yeah. That's not
everything in this universe needs to be unnerving. That's just the nature of the way it is.
And the most disturbing part of that whole setup is that's his first go-to. I mean, Annie M has her in that room where she's talking to our doctor, and she's just talking about this whole thing, and he's like believing her, and he's asking these nice questions, and then he's like, "Yep, no, we're gonna juice her." It's just it's like, wow,
I think
man.
that's all he did there. I have a feeling that was his entire thing. So when they bring someone there, if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
That's true. I like that. Yeah. That's really good. Wow, that's really good. Too good for this podcast, I think. But no, so the other thing too is you have screaming in this asylum when she is there, and then Ozma, who we don't know who's Ozma at first, we think she's a fellow inmate. She goes, "Oh, those are the broken ones," and I'm like, "Oh, Jesus!" You got the people just screaming underneath, and we do have our young craft witch who later on, this movie caused her. See, she transported ahead in time, joined a high school, and then she joined a goth group and became a witch. That's what happened to Dorothy after this film.
And to certain people that watch this movie.
And for certain people that watch this movie.
Growing up.
But nothing seems to really faze Dorothy too much, especially when she gets into Oz, except when she sees the Emerald City gone, and we get to meet the Wheelers, who are replacements for the monkeys. And
no, they're not, Mark. They're really, really not.
Well,
they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be.
Yeah, I know.
There's a scene where they tell Dorothy to get away from them by going up the stairs, and there's more up top. I'm like, couldn't she just like run up there, just like swipe her hand, like just trip them, and they fall down the stairs, and she could get away? Just, whoop.
Do not talk about my childhood trauma like that. That was haunted my dreams as a kid. Oh my God, the Wheelers were the worst thing ever.
Well, they're creepy because
they had kids watch this movie, honestly. I mean, there's nothing like objectionable in terms of like gore or nudity or anything like that, but this is gonna scare the shit out of a kid. Did you watch it with your son today or no?
Huh?
Did you watch it with your son today or no?
No, he's.
Oh no, I would have. I don't know. Had he seen it in the past or no?
No, but I'm gonna make him watch it.
Halloween, that's a good Halloween bonding experience. You can share the trauma. No, the Wheelers, I mean, I dug the interesting thing of them having the masks on their heads, so when they wheel, though it doesn't make sense, because then how do they see where they're going? Because that means they're looking down when they're wheeling. And the Wheelers, folks, are these guys in these really long, their legs and arms are really long, and they have wheels for both feet and hands. And they're like rejects from the Joker casting. They're all like Joker rejects or wannabes. And you look at them, you go, they're creepy with the mask. But when they look up, you're like, okay, I'm no longer creeped out. Now you're just look ridiculous. And they're supposed to be like, they serve, who's it? Mombi, Mombi, who is the new Wicked Witch, basically. That's basically her character of sorts. And they serve her, and it's like, okay. And she herself is odd, but these guys were they're creepy at first, and then you watch them and you look at them, you go, they are so impractical.
And what an uncomfortable shoot that must be.
Oh,
their backs must have been killing them at the end of this.
The way they were talking, that reminded me of the screaming that they heard in the asylum. So I almost think like that idea and the screaming turned into the Wheelers.
well,
That and the stretchers, the gurneys,
the squeaky wheel on the stretcher.
Yeah,
That's your foreshadowing of that character. If you want to get the parallels of real life influences on Dorothy's perspective of Oz, there's your squeaky wheels there, which she has a key. She just happens to run down the right hallway where she could use the key of Oz, where she finds TikTok. Yes, before TikTok was a short video form explosive app that everybody looks at, it was a round, rotund, not C-3PO.
Also short.
Who was short and voiced by the same guy who voiced Admiral Akbar. It's a trap. And
for some reason looked like Wilford Brimley.
It looked like Wilford. Diabetes. So you have your replacement for the Tin Man. I mean, it really hits beat for beat the first one by.
But the like anthropomorphic couch, who is that supposed to be? Was that supposed to be the lion?
No, he was too chill. My wife loved the Gump or whatever it was.
The Gump. Yeah.
The Gump, the talking deer head. She liked him because he was like so chill.
He was high.
He was high.
So high the entire time.
I'm not sure. Maybe he was. Yeah, I'm not sure who he maybe was supposed to replace. Man,
Yeah,
I don't
he
think
was supposed to be I mean, if you're just looking at the cast of characters, I mean, none of the personalities match up really, but the Gump was supposed to be the lion, the giant animal thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got your Wheelers, you got your not Wicked Queen, who, by the way, she is in the best set of the entire movie.
That was like other parts. The two parts that traumatized me were the Wheelers and that hallway of heads. Especially the part where they all start screaming. I was like terrified of that when I was a kid.
And that's another thing that takes us back to an image from when she first arrives at Oz, and there's all these statues.
Yeah, because everybody in Oz,
girls dancing, but they're headless, and oh man, those are the heads that are in the hallway. You know, and you're talking about just kind of a visceral image that when, if you're a kid, you see a headless statue, it might be a little bit unnerving. But then when you find out that that's where she got her heads that she switches on, that's fucking terrifying.
Why didn't she take that weird squishy pumpkin head?
It
well,
wasn't
there's something else
squishy.
about that, because apparently she was wearing head number 26 or something. 22. And she must have never worn that head again because she forgot I'm up here.
Yeah.
So she apparently has the brains of whoever's head is on her shoulders at that time, which would then should mean that she would take on the personality of that person. Because who are you if you're not your brain?
Did you find a plot hole, Joe, in this so tight script? What? No, but that I forgot about the hallway of heads. I remember the Wheelers, and I remember her going into the palace and where Mombi was, and how she's supposed to be acting nice, and then she goes into the back to the hallway of heads, and I was just like, oh dear God. I'm like sitting here going, well, this took a turn. And then she just takes the head off and goes and puts the new head on and puts the Karen head on,
I watched this with Sean yesterday, and he's been watching this since he was a little kid.
Yeah.
So he told me that between this movie and the end of Willow, and that scene in particular in the hallway, Jean Marsh had traumatized him to such a degree that a few years ago, when I showed him The Changeling for the first time and she gets killed in the opening scene, gets hit by a truck, he's like, that just felt cathartic to me. This woman was just absolutely just terrified of his entire childhood based on those two roles. Then, her getting hit by a truck was like, wait, what's that?
Why did she sleep headless?
So she wouldn't snore?
That is a good reason. Well, nobody can wake you up if you can't hear him.
Yeah.
But the head screamed and she woke up.
Oh, that's true. Never mind. Are we discovering plot holes as we're going here?
Yeah.
This movie is 8 minutes longer than the original Wizard of Oz. A movie that, to my recollection, has, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 0 plot holes.
Yeah, I would say maybe one, but yeah.
So
pretty much, yeah.
Again, fundamentally, this film should not exist. and since we're talking about childhood trauma here, we've already mentioned Fairuza Balk, who would grow into being, quite an actress. And I don't blame her, completely blank slate characterization on her necessarily, because she was a child performer, but she was also being directed to perform the material as written.
Mm-hmm.
But when she's going into that hall of heads and all this stuff, you folks were traumatized as both children and as an adult. Where was that horror on the face of the kid? Judy Garland would have reacted. Seriously, though, when she encountered like really creepy, awful things in that 39 film, we saw that expressed on Judy Garland's face. Fairuza Balk was like,
no, there's a reason for that. Because you take this as canon, then if you go back, she recognized the characters, which means to her that's what they looked like in the original film. So, the Tin Man looked like that freaky, creepy Tin Man-y thing and all that stuff. So she's already seen enough horrible stuff that she expects when she goes to Oz to see these creepy, horrifying things.
Yeah, she did have trees.
No, I'm talking specifically about the Hall of Heads, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's expecting the weird stuff to happen in Oz, like that she knows that just happened. So she just takes everything with a grain of salt. And she's like, all right, this is just Oz.
She pretty much rolls with anything in Oz.
That's a screenwriter approach to writing a character. Look, you can go through trauma and still be traumatized and horrified by new, disgusting, weird things. It's not like something happens to you and then you're just fine, whatever, the rest of your life. That's why we have, frankly, therapy and endless discussions about trauma going back to childhood. It affects you differently as you move throughout your life.
It does, but I think that for her justification, because nobody believed this was real, so she was like just happy that it was confirming that she actually was back in Oz and it was a real thing, as opposed to, I think she experienced more trauma from not being believed by people in the real world than she did from Oz itself.
And
let's go back to A Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay, when Nancy Thompson survives the first movie, and then she comes back for Dream Warriors, she does not go into that dream realm understanding, oh, Freddy's in here and there's awful things that can kill me. I understand that I'm in a bit of a fantasy world, but there are real world stakes. She's not like, oh, it's cool, guys, don't worry about it, I've been through this before. No, she's terrified.
This is true. This is
a weird character thing with this version of Dorothy, because nothing gets to her.
No,
like TikTok is completely, he can't move because his wind up has run its course. And as she's being dragged away, she's like, "Don't worry, it's not your fault." They're falling from like a fucking cliff.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, don't worry about this, guys. It's not your fault." I'm like, I'd be screaming for my life, and she's like, "Don't worry about it. It's not your fault."
Yeah, it's a screenwriter talking and not a character.
It can't be helped.
Yeah. I mean, I get what they wanted to, but yeah, I found it hilarious as well that Dorothy just like rolled with anything going on.
Literally falling off a cliff and going, "It can't be helped."
Well, I mean. And they find they find this other MacGuffin of the powder of life, which they use to help bring back the head of a Gump. He's mounted, and they brought him back. And I'm like, that's why my wife thought he was so chill, because when the deer started talking, he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I just heard this bang, and then I ended up here. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Never mind the fact you've been dead and made into venison meat. No, that doesn't affect this moose. And he's just like, yeah, okay, you're gonna put me on the front of a couple of couches. Okay, that's cool.
Well, and also it was I'm sure a coincidence because these movies came out at the same time. Although I don't know because they both involve puppetry. I have to look it up.
Yeah.
But Santa Claus the movie had a very similar thing of the magical powder that brought it fed the reindeer. It was essentially like glittery pixie dust pepper.
Mm-hmm.
They do the same thing here with the Gump. Yeah.
A lot of this movie reminded me of Neverending Story.
Yes. Yeah. My wife, well, there's a lot of things it borrows from, I think. I mean, the Wheelers actually a little bit reminded me just a bit of the Beatles from from Dark Crystal, the Beatles soldiers.
Yeah.
The way they roll out and that. So those reminded me from that.
Was this a Henson thing? Was the Jim Henson Company involved?
I think Henson was involved. I think they had to be. Yeah, I think they were in Return to Oz. They might have been, though I don't know. I think the chicken would look better if the chicken throws quips and stuff, and they keep making this gimmick of, did anybody tell him about the chicken? Did anyone tell the Gnome King about the chicken? Oh no, the chicken.
She has a chicken with her. A chicken.
Oh, just to close the loop on that, Jim Henson wasn't involved, but the Henson Company did the effects, and Brian Henson was actually Jack Pumpkinhead.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
why you see that would have taken me 2 seconds to go look at, and thanks Ian for doing it for me because I could have looked that up before we got out of here.
No, that's okay. No, I was wondering how much they were involved in this or not either, but I mean the chicken looked fairly good. The chicken, here's what's funny. The animatronic chicken, I will say, probably has the most personality out of almost any of the characters in this film. My wife said that. That's why she said, did the chicken get an Academy Award? She's like, because that's the best character in this movie is the quippy chicken.
I was confused as to why it kept saying to go home and it wanted to go home. And at the end it was like, why would I go back there? And I'm like, you just spent the entire movie telling her to go home.
Maybe it wanted Dorothy to go home so that it could hang out in Oz. You're like, I don't want to be here with this blank slate nonsense. You're no fun, Dorothy. I want to hang out with Ozma.
Well, I mean, and never mind the fact. I mean, the inconsistencies are so much in here. We spend so much time too in the Mumby castle section too. That is an extensive amount of scenes where we hang out there, and then when they get the flying Gump and they make it to the mountain, because go figure, the mountain gnome stole all the emeralds from Emerald City and turned everybody to stone. And that's why it's all looking like apocalyptic. And so she decides to fly out to the mountain, which is, guess what? Surrounded by the deadly sands, which apparently the Wheelers don't know, because the Wheelers start chasing them by on the ground, and they get to the edge of the desert, and all of a sudden, like 3 of them just keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a suicide mission at that point because you're the king is in charge. Maybe
that's true. But they fly across the desert on this makeshift ramshackle Gump flying vehicle, which I did like the flying. I like Gump, but they're flying, and this is the first time Dorothy gets to sleep, and we actually get a fade to black, which in a movie is really weird to see so many of those. But anyway, we get a fade to black in which she wakes up, the cart's falling apart because of the ropes breaking and that. And that's where they fall. And that's where Joe was saying that they're falling when their flying contraption falls apart. And Dorothy's just like, oh yeah, I'm flying. No, don't worry. It's not your fault, Mr. TikTok. Yeah, don't worry, Mr. Gump. It's not your fault. I'm like, you're flying. And I don't know how high Moose Plane went, but he didn't have to go so high. They could have just flown straight, but he flew like 10,000 feet in the air.
Well, it's also a problem, and this is, I'll call it a nitpick, but who cares? The filmmaker should have known better. When they're flying, and there's that whole thing where they can see the Wheelers kind of pursuing them on the ground. They're up in the night sky. There are glittering stars and a full moon, and yet when we cut to the Wheelers on the ground, it's kind of day for night, but it's clearly like the sun's out. It's in a blue overcast, but it's not even filmed to look like it's nighttime. And they keep cutting back and forth. I'm like, no, if you're going to try and pull that off, don't keep cutting back and forth, because that's just going to take me further out of the movie.
Yeah, remind me that this doesn't look right.
It's just so sloppy. Yeah. And this is a Disney production. And
well, this was when Disney was still on the ropes. This is before we talked about on Nightmare on Elm Street on your show, and especially New Line Cinema, the house that Freddie built, because they pulled them out of so much financial problem by having a hit. Alan Menken and Howard Ashman pulled Disney out of the exact same hole with their films, because this was still this is before Little Mermaid and all of that. And suddenly Disney became the juggernaut it did.
Well, the Renaissance.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, I'm not talking necessarily about like finances. I'm talking about the attention to detail. Maybe this is symptomatic of the era, but I mean, Walt would have never let this fly.
Literally and figuratively.
I will say the one. Oh, so go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is this movie was brought to you by more so than Disney. It was brought to you by a lot of cocaine.
No.
Hence the magic powder.
Actually, my wife said there was a lot of cocaine in the 80s, she said, but this film, that's not the drug you need to watch this film.
LSD, it was straight up acid.
This is some acid
or
stuff.
Shrooms or something.
Shrooms or acid or something.
But you know what I thought was funny as an adult? Watch this, which I didn't think as a kid. Is when they're talking to the Gnome King and he's all like big and tough and scary, and then he's like, "Look at my pretty sparkle shoes."
I mentioned that to Jill. She's like, "Oh, look, Disney was already woke because he's all buff and manly, and he's like all low voice and everything, and then all of a sudden he just pulls his little skirt aside. He goes, "Look at my ruby slippers."
I think they had to pay a good amount of money to MGM for the ruby slippers.
That's where most they had to pay some serious bank to even use ruby slippers, because MGM was like, yeah, you ain't using any of our shit.
Which, I mean, they could have made any kind of a magical totem. They didn't have to actually show the ruby slippers. And on top of that, he didn't have to wear the ruby slippers. You could have just had them come out of a rock wall being held by a fist or something, like, see, this is the core of my magic, if they even wanted to go that route.
Yeah, and his weird stone door opening thing was very off-putting.
My wife said, so that's where Goatsy came from.
That's exactly what my husband said.
I love it. I'm going to tell her that, Celeste, because she just, the first time she saw that, she's like, oh, so this movie built the internet then, huh?
Yeah, my husband was like, oh yeah, Goatsy. I'm like, yeah, thanks for that. Not that I wasn't thinking the same thing, but
no, I was. It's not like I wasn't either. But after she mentioned it, I'm like, I just couldn't help but not see it. So every time that door opened afterwards, I was just like, yeah, wait, thanks, hon, thank you. The one of the cool things I did like about with the Gnome King and the Stone Guy was the face that traveled through stone. I liked that concept, and I actually liked the Gnome King a bit too. But I was like sitting here going, Dorothy, you dealt with the wizard. You're gonna buy this agreement from this freaking Gnome King who annihilated the Emerald City and said, "Oh, I just took back what was stolen from me." He tried to use some logic on her that, I took the emeralds, they took them from me, and the whole greed angle. And then he makes a deal with her, and I'm just like, you didn't bother to ask what would happen if you guessed wrong. Right. I'm like, even a kid, at her age would have been like, what if we guess wrong? Or someone else, TikTok. Come on, TikTok. Your brain was still, you had your key wound up still on your thinking key.
And why couldn't she use that logic to get back her ruby slippers?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, another hole. Uh-oh. Wow, this is...
Well, if the emeralds were stolen, the rubies, he could probably say, well, those are stolen. How do you think those slippers were made?
That's
If
true.
they were actually made of enchanted rubies. I don't know. And if they were they comfortable? No, I liked the Gnome King conceptually,
Right.
but they set it up terribly.
Yeah.
Because it isn't until after he starts transforming back into Nicol Williamson that he says, the more things that your team gets wrong in terms of guessing, the more human I become. It's just, it goes from, and I wrote this down in my notes, it goes from this rather elaborate animated texture, I'm going to call it claymation for short, but animated stone face and the hands coming out and everything, to all of a sudden it cuts to, oh, it's just a guy in rock makeup. Did they run out of money? And like 5 minutes later, he explains, "Oh yeah, I become more human. The more guesses they get wrong." I'm like, yes, you set that up early, because otherwise, I'm like, it seriously looked like a budget problem.
Well, yeah, the whole idea that suddenly it's like, oh, so that's the reason you want them and you're making the knickknacks is you're eating the souls of these people, but that's at no point mentioned at any point or implied at all at any point in this film. It was just initially he mentions, oh, I was stealing the emeralds back, but I'm like, the film literally when they leave the tower and they get to the mountain, it becomes a completely different story. It really does. It like suddenly turns from the Gnome King, who's just greedy and wants to hoard his jewels, to no, if I suck their souls, in my trinket room, I become more human. And I'm like, wait, what?
What happened was Steven Spielberg, who was involved in this movie, he said, this is terrible through and through, but I can condense this laborious, horrible 15-minute room segment down into 3 minutes and make it work in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is what he did.
That's
the cup of a carpenter. Go through, pick the enchanted object that's the correct one, and if you don't, then horrible things happen. And he did it with economy, with drama, with suspense, with stakes. None of that is evident in Return to Oz.
Well, even then, we get the Dorothy that's rolling with it, right?
She's just rolling.
I mean, because she didn't ask what consequence if they get it wrong, which I would have asked that. I'm like, you're making the deal. You're like, okay, if you pick the right one, hey, all good. And you're like, what if I picked the wrong one? I mean, even when the diamond in the rough was going into the lion head to go get the lamp, they were like, yeah, don't touch the other shit or bad things happen.
I think it was probably the time appropriate authority figure, because wizards were not a typical part of an authority figure. But if you assume if it's a king that it's somebody that you're supposed to like respect and believe and trust or whatever.
Yeah, somebody dropped something. But it's maybe it is because he was an authority figure, but you still, I mean, it's Oz. She ran into the wizard who lied to her, I mean, just to get her to kill the witch, and now you run into another figure who's pretty much like Oz, the Wizard of Oz, and then you're just not distrusting after you went through the same shit like 6 months earlier.
Also, the wizard, this is all his fault. Because he put the fucking scarecrow in charge at the end of the 39 movie.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's like, wait, he's been searching for a brain, and you gave him a worthless piece of papers, and you have a brain. Now you're in charge. I'm getting out of this fucking place.
Here's your degree, but I didn't actually get a physical brain. The Tin Man even got a physical heart. Nah, here, just have the degree. Shove it in your head. You'll be all good. But I think the one segment I did actually enjoy was when Dorothy went into the knick-knack room. I actually liked that segment, how it came out. Not exactly the solution, because it's like, oh, maybe all the people from the Emerald City are green. I'm like, she wasn't under a time constraint to look through the knickknacks, and yet she was touching shit like right away. And I'm like, but I liked that segment. I did like it because there was a little bit of tension. And then meanwhile, you find out that what's her name has a tunnel going underneath the desert so she could reach the king. And you get that really awkward thing where she comes up and bows and he's like, further.
Yeah.
Further. And she's laying like flat on the ground. And I'm like, anyone else feeling awkward right now?
Yeah, it was.
This is,
and she changed the wheelers up like horses or something. It was weird.
yeah, it was weird. But in the knickknack room, Dorothy, I mean, she just goes and touches things twice. She finds TikTok, who I was wrong. Tim Rose played actual physical TikTok. Sean Barrett was the voice, but he played possum. So his logic was, if I touch it and become a trinket, you'll know what type of trinket to look for, which I kind of get that logic, but looking at the variety of trinkets in the room, I'm like, that doesn't quite jive.
Well, I think it was partially, if she was there, then she would see what he transformed into, and at least know
Right.
not to pick that object.
Well, that object, at least one less object to.
Well,
But
but
I mean-
she wouldn't have picked that anyway had he not been transformed.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If he had been if he had been transformed, then she wouldn't have known. But he played the ruse, so she would go in there. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I think that he was trying to like see if there was a pattern to what they turn into. For example, if he turned into a clock or something, okay, it's
Right.
related to like his name or something.
right. But that's the kind of cleverness and brains that he had not exhibited anywhere in the film up until this exact moment, which was brought up earlier in terms of like, well, why didn't he figure out the conditions of this game?
She probably
know.
didn't turn the dial enough.
Yeah, you got to turn that thinking dial, because he had the thinking dial. He had I do love the one line, because he has the dial where you crank it so he can think, but then you have another dial where you have to crank so he could talk. And then you have the third dial where you could crank it so he could move. And she even drops the line of, why didn't they just design it so that you could turn it yourself? Which would be great, but he's proven he can spin his whole body around, so he could just spin the keys in front of him and turn the keys himself. But anyway, but that's beside the point. But so we get the trinket, Aladdin's room, where she closes her eyes and finds the big shiny emerald. Gee, what would be the trinket that one of her Emerald City people were turned into? Oh, I don't know. The big shiny emerald. And of course, they decide from there that, oh, anything green is probably someone from Emerald City. And then the king gets pissed and he comes and he pulls the whole I'm going to swallow your soul type of thing. And then we get this epic showdown where the chicken's been hiding in Pumpkinhead's head the whole time. And what'd you guys think of this solution? Why they've been setting up why chickens are evil, Celeste? Why are chickens evil?
Because eggs are poison. And she picks that moment to lay an egg directly into his mouth.
Well, he was holding Jack over his mouth and she was in there, so she just got scared
She like
and laid
an egg through his eye hole into somebody's mouth, and that just was very adult for a children's movie.
and so we find out eggs are poison, and yeah, and what I thought,
everybody, because the chicken wants to stay. If she was in danger because chickens are bad, why would she want to stay?
because she didn't want to be food.
Well, it was just to gnomes, I guess.
It
Yeah.
was just to the rock people or whatever.
Yeah.
But they have noses. I mean, we clearly see that even in the wall etching. So how did none of the sentient rocks that are part of this entire fortress catch that there was a chicken, the thing that creates the poison which will kill all of them, inside this jack-o'-lantern's head?
I mean, they mentioned the line of like, we don't have any updates on where the chicken is, and like,
Yeah,
Inside the head of the person who's standing right next to you.
it's a clean
She would
chicken.
eat pumpkins, right? So she was probably in there like eating his head on the inside.
Eating the inside of his head.
Sustaining herself by eating the bit of the seeds and,
And that's
stuff.
how she's able to finally lay an egg.
At the exact same time she needed to. Well, she got scared. And
Yeah.
what threw me for that is, okay, I get that, but she laid an egg into his stomach and he realizes it's poison. He realizes he's probably going to die. He doesn't drop Jack. He either, you laid an egg, and he put Jack calmly down. I'm like, how's this dude not pissed? Just throw him away. Up until now, this guy's been pretty brutal, but now all of a sudden, now that he's been poisoned, he's like, here, I'm going to put you down gently now. There you go.
He established in the original movie, I think, that poison was one of the only ways to get the ruby slippers from somebody because. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting.
The person would have to die, yeah.
Yeah, but then they showed they were you couldn't actually directly attack him, so the witch was going to poison Dorothy. So I thought it was interesting they brought that back. They just did it in a very weird way.
Yeah, it was very.
How do you poison a rock? I guess with an egg.
Poison a rock with an egg. Yeah. Well, never mind. He locked up Mombi earlier just in a cage for the hell of it.
Well, that's so that they can have the callback back in the real world when she's getting carted away. They had to do that, Mark. They had to.
Yeah, I know, but it didn't really. I'm like, why are you turning? Okay, whatever. And then everybody's happy and la la la. And then you get me, the adult. I didn't think of it as a kid, but as an adult, going. They kill the Gnome King, and so everybody in Emerald City is starting to be restored back to their human form. And I'm like, what about the people with no heads? I'm like, this is gonna get gruesome quick.
Oh
yeah, but she was walking around with no head. She got out of bed and was walking around just fine with no head, so they'll be all right. They can go find it.
It's true, but they appear and suddenly they already have their heads, and I'm like, ah.
That would have been great because they could have turned that into the Ruby City. Everyone comes back, there's these blood geysers going all over the place.
Well, some of them had broken. Some of them were statues that were broken. I'm like, okay, way to get around that.
There's your inmate screams coming.
There you go. The thing is, before we get to the real world, we do get the celebration scene where Dorothy has returned, and we get the return of our original characters that were with Dorothy. But I think they pulled the Canon Films, when they turned the light off on Masters of the Universe set while the actors were there because they ran out of money. I think they ran out of money and put all their money into the chicken, because we get the Cowardly Lion, we get the Tin Man, and we get the Scarecrow, but they literally look like Spirit Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Well, they look like the sketches from the books from
honestly. That's the thing. I agree that I think that they based a lot of the characters on the books in this one, which is why and the books were nightmare fuel, so it made sense.
Yeah, it doesn't work as a 1-to-1 sequel to the 39 Wizard, but
no. Well,
it works as something from the books.
But the thing is, with the drawings, their drawings, you can accept their caricatures a little bit more than when you put them in real life. Because when you put them in real life and you have this completely dark film, once we finally did run into the Scarecrow, which Dorothy found because the Gnome King was holding on to the Scarecrow, he turned him into a thing, into a trinket. So once the Scarecrow gets, restored and they beat the Gnome King, I'm looking at the Scarecrow going, that guy's scary. He's got these big button eyes and he's floppy, but he's pastel, but his face looks like a gingerbread man put.
Yeah, Mark, that's because, and why is he terrifying? Because he's a what crow?
Scarecrow, yes, I get it.
Supposed to be weird, and
but then the lion, I'm like, the lion, seriously, I'm like, really? They couldn't even put a guy in a lion suit. They
keep cutting back to it too. The same thing with the day for night problem is he's kind of off in the corner. You can just barely tell. It almost looks like they got a guy with a hand up the back of its head, because it occasionally will go with its mouth. It's watching to and they keep coming back to the same shot. It's outrageous. It's awful. I was just that whole celebration sequence. I was pissed because everybody got a medal except for Chewie, and wrong movie. But not
complete with our TikTok who is supposed to be made of brass, but they polished him C-3PO gold.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
literally three. And you do get the throne shot that's practically ripped directly from the throne scene. It was like, wow. And then that's where we find out Ozma, who's the young princess who took over, who's supposed to be a descendant of the wizard and rightful heir of Oz.
No, a descendant of the royalty that was around before the wizard showed up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So she was trapped in a mirror, and Dorothy gets her through, and that's where they get the ruby slippers, and she goes back to Oz. And then she wakes up on the shores, and suddenly her parents have come back from Kansas to look for her. We don't know how long she's been missing. She wakes up on the bank of Crystal Lake. And then, we've got this whole thing where lightning struck the asylum and it burned to the ground. And so she decides to take Dorothy back. And it just...
That was a random line, because you see the asylum, it's not like a shack, it's a full-on building.
Stone
so like
building.
How does one lightning strike like burn an institution like that to the ground? I need a sequence showing that happening, otherwise it didn't happen.
Well, and then you get the lady getting hauled away by the paddy wagon, literally wagon, for whatever reason. And then suddenly
I still not been able to figure that out to this day.
Maybe she was insane, not arrested.
But they don't give anything. All you do is you just see her in the cage glaring at Dorothy. It's like she doesn't even like make a comment or yell, "You wretched little girl." You know, you could even throw in a throwback to the original and go, "You wretched little girl, I'll get you, my pretty. I'll get you." You could have done something like that, but
that wouldn't make sense because that's
not going to stop this movie.
But Margaret Hamilton's character before she's the Wicked Witch, Elmira Gulch, is that her name? I think.
Yeah.
She's very much an asshole.
Yeah.
You know, this lady, while it seems like it seems like a more again a Nurse Ratched situation, where it's like we're seeing it through the eyes of a character and seeing why she's so bad and wicked in this. But outside of the dream sequence in Oz, none of this stuff tracks in real life. You know, it doesn't seem right in real life. She seems like she's a normal nurse who's trying to do what she's supposed to do.
She's a bit creepy, though.
She is
not
creepy.
very warm or supportive.
But you can't arrest people for looking creepy.
I mean, you can.
Happened. I think the big thing, I think they were trying to be they were too subtle, because there are a couple of glimpses when they wait till Annie M goes, like they're just waiting till electroshock therapy the girl, like they're just they give a little like a glint or something, like, are we going to shock her now? You know, not quite like that bad, but I think it's a little implied.
Yeah, like the strapping her down and then just be like, so you don't fall off there. Like,
yeah. So, I mean, she was acting kind of nefarious there, but not nearly like when we got the original witch in the 39 one, who you knew she's like, yeah, next time I'll cook and kill your dog. And totally.
Yeah. Well, that's an obvious, like, you know, that's obviously, I mean, I feel like Auntie Em and Uncle Henry are more the villains in this one.
Yeah, Uncle. I
mean, hell, Piper. You had Piper Laurie right there.
Well, it's funny because there's actually a scene in the Oz Dream World where Jean Marsh is in this kind of like I can't remember the context of the scene, but she kind of bursts into a room and she's backlit and she's wearing this kind of like almost like a white robe, and it reminded me of Piper Laurie's scene in Carrie at the end of that movie.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking of a better movie, so I had a great time for about 30 seconds. Then I went back to watching Return to Oz.
And they still never resolve what happens to Dorothy afterward. Can she sleep? Like now, every 6 months, she has natural disaster trauma.
Well, there were
She's got-
14. There were 14 books in the series, so who
Well,
knows?
she's got like the tornado, and then she has the lightning, and then a flood.
Yeah. It's a bizarre film. This is Disney in its weird phase within the 8 years.
It's a goth phase. Let's face it. This is the
Yeah.
goth phase of
It's their
Disney.
goth because they made the black hole around this time, like 2 or 3 years earlier. They did
The
the black.
Watch in the Woods, Something Wicked This Way
Yeah.
Comes,
So-
Black
so I mean-
Cauldron.
Yeah, they
Disney was going through a dark phase.
Disney went through a dark phase, and that is so evident here. It is odd. It's interesting entry into Disney's library. I mean, I know, Ian, you found it bored. I found the production design and everything interesting. The story makes very little sense at all, and I just don't know what this was. But I'm glad we got to talk about it. I feel better now, though. I'm glad I got to revisit and talk about it. I've been finding a way to try to talk about this film for a while because I'm like, I gotta, because it's such a weird entry during those 80s kids films when you got those weird entries. You know, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, all of better films. Don't get me wrong, Never Ending Story, all of those. But I mean, this one, well, it felt like it was, I think my wife put it best. She's like, this is like Alice in Wonderland meets Oz,
Yeah.
is
I
what
kinda
this.
see- But I mean,
It was like-
they're all kind of that, though.
It was Alice in Wonderland and Never Ending Story together.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the Wizard of Oz stuff is basically Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess in a
The
way
Lewis
it is.
Carroll influence is always running
Yeah.
through the L. Frank Baum stuff. And actually, I just had an idea that I got to talk to you about, Celeste, because of
Uh-oh.
this.
Now, what's interesting, and I know we're going long, but it's just something that I was talking to my wife about because she looked up the series of books and didn't realize there was like 13 books in this
14.
series or
Well, yeah,
14.
you just said it's 14.
Yeah, it's like, but all of them involve Dorothy as a kid.
Mhm.
I'm like, I wouldn't mind them attempting possibly something with Dorothy, better than Hook, but Dorothy as, grown up now. And there is actually someone I talked to them a while ago. They were trying with it with a film. It was going to be a series. I don't know if it went anywhere. It was called Gale Stay Away from Oz. And it actually deals with Dorothy Gale older and still dealing with and end up coming back to Oz, but Oz is a more mature area. I don't know if Daniel Alexander was behind it. I don't know if anything came of it, but you saw very little stories, and I was just surprised. I'm like, with Hollywood, you would think Dorothy older would be just a natural, like, yeah, let's do that.
You see, here's where I think there's these sound expensive, which I don't know that you can do necessarily anymore. It's got to be like, yeah, I don't know. And I think it's there's some degree of fear of trying to touch that 39 version.
Well, they did it here, though. I mean, they said that it was from the books, but it's a movie, so it's automatically going to associate.
And that's the thing. I think no matter what you do with the Wizard of Oz, even Wicked, you're immediately going to draw comparisons to 39.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is, and I wonder if a lot of it is let's stay away from that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean,
What do we do? I mean, there was that Sam Raimi movie. There is Wicked. There was the Muppet Wizard of Oz. So yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
yeah,
we
but
need a
but that's
trauma
not. But that's not Dorothy is older. That's still like, I mean,
Yeah, it's still the same story.
you're still doing basically the same story. I would love to see an interesting story to where Dorothy's older and she goes back to Oz and suddenly, it's all like high rises. Yeah.
They
I
just
wanna see
spin
the
it
color
in
version.
But honestly, Mark, where do you go with that? Like, because otherwise you're just going to have to end up repeating the same touchstones from the 39 version. Otherwise, it's just the Wizard of Oz with someone who's older. Like, is there anything you're talking purely aesthetics.
True.
Right? And I get what you're saying about the production design. I can flip through a making of this movie's art book in 5 minutes and get wowed. This movie, again, is almost 2 hours long. And at the end of it, I'm left with, it looked okay. It had nothing to say. And it's a mishmash of terrible ideas and plot holes from a movie that it stands on its own.
Yeah.
You don't need to adapt anything else because the Wizard of Oz story has been told. Wicked is its own kind of thing, and I'm not a fan of that story either. I like the last 20 minutes of the first movie, and I'm kind of dreading seeing the sequel. But it's like, unless you have a reason to make this beyond its IP that everyone recognizes, just leave it alone. And that's kind of that's the story that Disney is learning with Tron now. You mentioned the Great and Powerful Oz. Oh, it's Sam Raimi going to Oz. It's like, yeah, it's Sam Raimi going to Oz. And again, no one talks about that movie anymore.
Yeah.
And honestly, Sam Raimi going to Oz 30 years prior to that movie being made would have been a fuckload more interesting. He just got lazy and did a CGI nightmare.
He did. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. That it is, folks. Return to Oz. If you're looking for an interesting or alternate storyline told of a famous fairy tale, I would actually recommend right now, because it's spooky season, The Ugly Stepsister. I would say check that out if
I've
you're
heard really good things about that. Yeah.
If you're looking, we just mentioned here tonight about telling different perspective in that. The Ugly Stepsister is basically a story of Cinderella, but it's told from the perspective of one of the stepsisters completely, and the horrific things she goes through to try to win her prince. And I was surprised. I went into it cold, and while I'm not saying it's breaking new ground, it is a far more fascinating and still completely dark and disturbing film, similar, and it's not for kids, but if you're looking for alternate, I would recommend that because it's spooky season. So, but I also recommend you now listening to my wonderful guests as I give them the license to shill. First off, thank you, Ian, Joe, and Celeste, for doing this. Always fun. Always great. This show is nothing without you. We are nominated for the Astra Podcast Awards, which get announced tomorrow, the winners. And while we got a huge competition, I've got fingers crossed. Maybe, you never know. There's a little glint of hope. But even if not, we were nominated. It is an honor. Astra Awards. Look them up, folks. But before you do that, check out my stuff from my wonderful crew. Celeste, ladies first. License to shill is yours. What do you got?
Hi, I'm Celeste Parker from Hex and Arcane. I'm a horror host. If you want to find anything I've done, just look up Hex and Arcane, www.hexandarcane.com. We're on all sorts of social media, so check it out.
Absolutely. And Joe, you got anything to shill, sir?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm the stinky resurrected zombie on Hex and Arcane that she occasionally pulls out when she needs to travel somewhere and needs to take someone with her. There's no episode of The Last Drive-In this week. There will be one next Friday night, and it's a pair of Black Glove Killers. We can't say what the movies are, but there will be a panel of experts discussing Giallo. So that'll be a fun little episode next week with two great Giallos as the movies. Nice. I think that's it for me as far as shilling anything.
Awesome. And Mr. Ian Simmons, the floor is yours, sir.
I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com and also on YouTube. We do roundtables and interviews and live streams and all that good stuff. This Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central, we're going to be talking about YouTuber Chris Stuckman's venture into feature filmmaking, Shelby Oaks, which I have not seen yet, but I've heard amazing things. No, I can't.
So have I. I've heard it's great.
Really?
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
You are the one person I've heard that from. So I'm hoping. I'm hopeful when, despite what you've heard over the last hour and a half, I go into movies wanting to love them. So,
he does. Honestly, he does.
Because I go in expecting to hate everything, and maybe it's just I set my expectations so low.
Expecting versus wanting, two different things. I didn't say I expect to love them. I said I want to love them.
There you go.
But So yeah, there's that, and then I'm also here on Sunday nights talking with you, lovely people. It's always blast. Even if I don't like the movies, I love getting into it with you.
And I appreciate every single one of you and all of our previous guests. Thank you so much. You are, guys, the reasons this show got nominated, not because of this Babbling Pollock. But if you're interested in this Babbling Pollock stuff, specialmarkproductions.com for all your movie man needs. I've got and if you're watching on our YouTube channel, please check it out. I am in the middle of Vinyl Ween. It was a last minute idea where we're looking at vinyl film soundtracks that I have in my vinyl collection. Some of them are unwrapping and new, some of them are ones I've opened before, but we're exploring the physical releases of them on Vinyl Ween. So look for It's Vinylly Minds, Vinyl Ween, and my interview with Andrew J. Chambers about his upcoming film that's not out yet, Orgy of the Dead 2. Yes, someone made a sequel to Orgy of the Dead, and we talked to the director about it. So check that out on our YouTube channel. Thank you all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and bells and whistles all of my guests as well as our stuff if you like. And until next time, we'll just say good night, everyone.